the end of the day, what we're trying to prevent is common cyber attacks. We're just looking at an attacker who is trying to get hold of any information in your organisation. Whenever you connect anything to the internet and you access it across that internet, the internet traffic should always be treated as untrusted and not safe. Scope is how you define what is included in assessment. And normally the scope is defined by network boundaries and those services you connect to. We have a number of controls outlined in Cyber Essentials, which are technical requirements, and the scope is those devices they've got to be applied to. For Cyber Essentials, because it's a technical certification and you're applying technical controls, the boundaries have to be technically defined. So we're either looking at, when you're looking at sole traders, we're looking at an individual device and a mobile phone, that's the boundary of scope. But when you grow those organisations, it's networks. So wherever you have your internet router with firewall, that's the boundary of your scope. So Cyber Essentials, the starting position is going for whole company organisation scope. That will give you the best level of protection that the certification scheme offers, and it covers every device you have in the organisation and that you've applied all the controls in the correct manner and are technically correct as we require. Now, there are times where you maybe have something that's gone out of date, that's no longer available, but is still crucial to the running of your business. We have this in large organisations often, maybe a university hospital may have a couple of MRI scanners that still run on Windows XP. We would say don't expose them to Cyber Essentials, but maybe they need to transfer data from those across the internet. But those MRI scanners are extremely expensive to replace. So that is a good example where a partial scope could come into play. So you'd get the business operations of that organisation certified, but those MRI scanners, they will then go out to scope because you're still exposing part of your organisation to the internet. If you want to take things out of scope, you would need an additional firewall to create a barrier in between. As a smaller organisation, if your turnover is under £20 million, you can get free cyber insurance as part of the self-assessment process. In order to achieve that, you must have whole organisation scope. We're just looking at an attacker who is trying to get hold of any information in your organisation. So that could be anything that could disrupt you, encrypted. So ransomware encrypts data, not sensitive data. It doesn't have to be employee data that they get, but it could disrupt your business. So for Cyber Essentials, organisational data is any data you hold in the organisation. Organisational services is those software devices that you connect to, cloud services, which are those you connect to across the internet. They're all in scope because they go across the internet. So very often with a cloud service, you will have control over the user accounts, the password policy, but you may not have control over perhaps the anti-malware protection that is in place. That might be controlled, but some of the services such as Google Workspace and Microsoft 365, they have what's called a shared responsibility model in place, and you should always check those out when you're applying for Cyber Essentials to just see what level of control you have over it. But we provide a very useful table for this within the requirements for IT infrastructure document. Ports on a firewall, they are openings into your network at your office or whatever through that firewall device. And there's 60 roughly 65,000 of those ports that can be opened up. And an attacker could see that if they're left wide open as a doorway into your organisation. But the best way to block it, and that's by default, is to close all inbound ports. That closes those holes immediately. But we talk about ports because sometimes, depending on the size of your organisation, and you may host your own website, you may have had email services, perhaps some file transfer to a device in your organisation, you need to open ports to make that happen. But you don't want to leave them open. We have to go to software firewalls on a laptop because that's the bit you've got control over. The one provided by your internet service provider may have it in, but it's there designed mainly to give you an internet connection, to give you access. From a business point of view though, you want some control over a firewall. And the best way when you're a freelancer contractor with a single device or something like that is to apply the controls to the software firewall in your operating system. Printers and that kind of peripheral device, they're not in scope for Cyber Essentials. They create output of data, but as far as the attack vectors we're looking at, they don't see the same level of attacks. There is always a possibility they could be exposed to vulnerabilities. By putting the firewall controls in, will it reduce that risk of exposure to that kind of device? The same rules apply in a large organisation. The difference is they may have more expensive firewalls on the boundaries to the internet, and those firewalls and routers have some very complex configurations, but still you'll have the expertise, or should be signing up to somebody who can support that device and can configure it on behalf of your larger or medium organisation to make sure those inbound ports are blocked off. BYOD presents an issue for any organisation that allows it because there may be less control on how they are maintained over a period of time, and you as an applicant organisation need to have a level of control and instruction to your users that use BYOD to apply the controls, because they are still vulnerable and could make your organisation vulnerable to a cyber attack. Now, the default position is you need to do this by technical means. Technical means at minimum you should be monitoring compliance for the operating systems and making sure those operating systems are in support and applying the updates within a regular period of time, which for Cyber Essentials is 14 days. Guest Wi-Fi in an organisation is normally set up not to communicate to the business operations networks. So devices on the guest network won't be covered, but if you have trustees or consultants come in and they connect to the business operation network, those devices will be in scope for Cyber Essentials because they're putting your organisation at threat if they don't apply the controls of Cyber Essentials. For Cyber Essentials, the responsibility of the application and the answers given is the applicant organisation. Often we get some people say, a lot of answers say, our IT services company or managed service provider do all this, and that's putting the answers. Actually, you still own the network as the applicant organisation, and you are employing their services to do the administration and apply the controls that you require for Cyber Essentials. So the responsibility always lies with the applicant organisation for the assessment, and that's why we ask for a responsible person to be listed in question A 2.10, and it must be an employee of the organisation, not a third party. And also at the end of the assessment, the signed declaration must be signed up by somebody at board or senior level who is an employee of the organisation. If it's self-employed, it would be the business owner. So there's lots of ways to get support for Cyber Essentials. So we have cyber advisors. These are highly professional people who understand Cyber Essentials in great depth. They can advise and help you implement the controls of Cyber Essentials before you take out the assessment. Then you have certifying bodies, also can advise on how to do it, but they will actually be employing assessors who mark your assessments as well. There's also help freely available on the IASME website. We have a Cyber Essentials Knowledge Hub that is available as well, that can give you advice and lots of frequently asked questions. So it's your one-stop call for all that kind of information. We have a small support team that can also help with some technical queries, but if that needs a bit more engagement, we'd always advise to go to a cyber advisor or a certifying body.